Thank you very much, Comrade Nomvula and Comrade Baleka Mbete. Let me thank you so much for that input. Ladies and gentlemen, that's really an update in terms of where we are, emphasizing that more than 90% of the delegates have been registered and a call has been made now to delegates to start moving towards plenary. The intention is to start as quickly as possible from now on, and we would obviously keep you updated just as we move forward. Can I check if there are any questions? Busi, I see your hand. Zianda, Natasha, in that order. Busi, you may proceed.
Thank you. The delegation from the Northwest will join you. And if they don't, what are the implications in terms of your processes and whether you'll be able to say you actually have a credible process at the end of the day? Can you really go ahead without the full credentials being in order?
Sorry, Busi, can I ask that you repeat the question? We lost you a little bit.
Okay, sorry. I am saying that you are saying that you're hoping that the rest of the Northwest delegation will join you. You hope so. And if they don't, what are the implications in terms of the credibility of your process?
Okay, it's Natasha P. from SABC News. Nomvula, I know you don't want to talk about issues around registration, but just as a follow-up to my colleague's question, Ubusi, around the delegation from the Northwest and KZN, I got a call in the morning and this, ANC Youth League, ANC Women's League member had said that there are fake delegates from the Northwest province and from KZN. Is this something that the ANC Women's League NTT is actually looking at? Also, are you not worried about the late delays? Because I find that, okay, maybe it's just a personal observation. At conference time, people are always so preoccupied about, electing people and not so much time is actually spent on policy and policy discussions. So are you not worried about that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's Zianda Ngobo from Newsroom Africa. Following on from my colleagues, we know that the Northwest, I think at some stage, was disbanded. So has that been a contributing factor towards them being able to register? I think at some stage, some of the women there were threatening court action. Where do we stand insofar as those matters are concerned? And then just from a program perspective, can we get an idea of how we're moving now that you're confirming that delegates are going forward? Who is opening this Congress possibly this evening? And just to also speak about the time issue, as the Women's League, have you reflected on this issue of registration and why it's taken so long, given the fact that you'd already postponed this gathering last week, talking about the same issues about registration? So what is it that you did not reflect on so that you would be ready for this at this particular moment? And then the issue of young women as well. If you look at some of the candidates that are being touted, it doesn't seem that there is parity or a consideration of young women and the generational issues when it comes to occupying this important body of the ANC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Busi, you've got a follow-up.
I was just wondering, I see that you said that Sisi Tolashe is chairing the National Preparatory Committee. I'm just wondering if you're not perhaps concerned about perceptions that somebody who is perhaps the front runner or a front runner as a candidate to be the president of this particular league is actually involved and very much involved in the preparations. Are you not opening yourselves up to conflict of interest?
Thanks again. I will cover some of the questions, and I know that the leadership will then also assist to respond to some. Let me start with the Northwest disbandment. I will assume that the question is maybe directed to the current PTT appointed by the entity. It was never disbanded, at least not under our leadership as the entity. The only thing that happened, it was the issue of powers being taken away from the structure, and that meant us being responsible through the Office of the National Organizer administratively, and also to guide them, but they remain intact in terms of the structure as PTT appointed, directly appointed. That's why they also have a standing to our meetings and also will be part of the participation in terms of the plans for the conference, except the fact that we are saying there are issues of registration for now. But also the issue of the percentage in terms of the quorum, if I may put it that way, to the conference. It will not affect because it is not one of the biggest provinces, but indeed the intention was never to be in a situation where any of our branches would be left behind, no, outside. We wanted everyone to be given a fair chance and a responsibility to participate more so on policy development and policy positions in the conference of the Women's League, because I think that's what we need to instill also to the South Africans that and the members of the Women's League, that our conference are not only merely meant to elect the leaders, but in the main, the election, it's part of the process. In the main, it's a platform created for us to revisit our policy positions taken previously and be able to influence even those of the mother body as we fight for the liberation and the plight of the women of this country. So in that we would not have problems. It will not affect the continuation of the conference. The Young Women's Desk and the generational mix, I'm not sure about that one. I would assume that the conference will then give an indication in terms of the nomination. I think it would be very unfair of me to just say in advance and know as to what will be the product of the process of the conference in terms of the leadership. But other than that, in terms of the credential also, Khoselwa, I don't think it will be fair, maybe from my side, to reveal a lot, because remember, credential are issues of closed session in the conference, and only after when they are adopted, we will all be afforded an opportunity to engage further and in details with the media. But for me, for now, I have a very limited space to do so, to get into deeper space of the credential. The conflict of interest, I leave to my senior colleagues.
Thank you. Good afternoon to the media house. My apologies with my voice. I think we are first appointed as members of the entity, and each one of us has been given a responsibility, even in terms of preparations of this conference. So each one of us seated here, those who might be elected or who might be nominated or not, you are given a responsibility. And when you are given that task, it's not based on your interest, whether you'll be nominated or not. Because when you are given this task, remember, you don't even know whether branches will nominate you or not. So we are just equal to a task, given responsibilities, all of us. So I don't think Meto Lashe has anything to do with the issue of conflict of interest, because she's serving there as one of the members of the entity, given that particular responsibility. Thank you.
I think on the same question, let me just add an example that should clarify the situation further. You will remember that the ANC held its 55th National Conference in December, which was finished off in Mangaung. And a comrade who is now, again, the national chairperson, chaired conference, because that was the task he got given in the period before we actually entered conference. So you don't get given a task on the basis of some anticipated or something that someone knows that you are going to be the front runner. No, we don't know that. Actually, officially, I don't know that. I don't know anything about who's running for what. Some of the things I'm hearing somewhere around here in the space, oh, so is steady. All right, interesting. So, niyazazi indaba, ngoba niyabantu bendaba. And it's okay, ngoba it's your business ukuthi nizazi indaba, so that niziconvey and zinizisele ebantwini kahle. Ningazifaka usawoti nespice nani. I don't know what else I must answer, Kusela. Or the Northwest issues. In Northwest, in Ezindo, it's got a package of matters that, unlike other provinces, it was faced with on the way to conference. At a certain point, yes, we all woke up to news that there's a court case or threatened and so on, but in the end, we were informed as the office bearers of the Women's League that court case or threats to take the league to court had been withdrawn. So that's formal, official, that was part of where we have come from. But right now, none of that is at issue right now. Right now, what's at issue are issues of registration, and the national coordinator who is absent, as you can tell, that's one of the items she has been tasked by the collective of the national task team to deal with. From last night already, or was it the other night, when we had an NTT meeting, she was given the task to actually listen to all the issues that related to Northwest, because she had been, by virtue of her heading the office of the national coordinator, being the person that was directly in touch with the issues, even at the point that you were referring to in terms of the question about that moment when there were problems in the Northwest. She's the one that is most informed, because her office had to directly deal with that situation on behalf of the collective of the national task team, not because she chose that it's a task that she enjoyed. Anything else?
No, thank you. I think just on the issue of the program, we have not yet distributed the program, colleagues, because I think you'll know that it's ANC tradition that the program must be adopted by conference first. But as in other ANC conferences, we will have, for example, the chairperson of the province will open, we'll have a national official deployed who will also address conference. The political report will be delivered by the national convener, Comrade Badlek Ahmed. But we will share that once conference has adopted it. You will all be invited to the open session as soon as a conference gets underway. And I just could not resist, Mambalega, to tell Uzianda that young women are fully participating in the Women's League, and we have absolutely no doubt that organically, like it happens in the ANC, they will rise through the ranks of the Women's League as well. We take exceptionally great pride in the fact that the content of this conference has been in the main developed by young people, led by, amongst others, Comrade Dibulelo Mahlati. So they are there. I know this is a constituency. Young Women of the Media wants to see young women everywhere. But they are there. Colleagues, did I see a follow-up? Okay, those will be the last two hands. You covered? Last three hands. Thank you very much. That's why.
Good afternoon, Mzwande Lumbeje from SAPC. Given the role that the Women's League play in society, it's very important to hear their voice, to lead on so many other issues. But one of the things that I have not seen is those discussion documents that we ordinarily get exposed to, which will then assist us in knowing what exactly are the areas that you are looking at. So what happened? I mean, as I sit here, other than the fact that this will be a conference which will have a new leadership elected, I actually cannot say what is it based on those documents that you will be championing. Because at the end of the day, election is not supposed to be the most important thing. The most important thing is, as the women of this country, as the leader of society, what is it that you are giving to South Africans, given the challenges that I don't even need to narrate? Thanks.
Just as a follow-up to Bambeji, yesterday you invited our members of the media and some ANC Women's League to a dialogue on some policy positions, but I think Bambeji is right. Where are the policy, discussion documents? And furthermore, what are the top 5 issues that the ANC Women's League wants to propose as policy propositions, aside from gender equality and 50-50 representation? Thank you. Must I repeat the question? Oh, okay. I just want to know what top 5 issues will you be tabling as the ANC Women's League in terms of your policy propositions, aside from gender equality, the 50-50 representation. What else will the ANC Women's League be pushing? Thank you.
Alpha Ramushwana here from Eyewitness News. I just want to speak to the conflict of interest that I'm noticing. Some years ago, the Women's League established a women's desk of some sort, actually, which aimed at speaking against GBV and assault cases against women. And one of the names that was put up was Mdumanana. In fact, you did a whole poster of Mdumanana, and he's also here being one of the runners or the organizers of this women's conference. Is that not a conflict of interest, having been identified him as a perpetrator, I quote, and also letting him organize this conference? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just respond first to the last question. Perhaps we need to time and time remind the public and the media people that we are first members of the African National Congress. Before we joined the Women's League, we are members of the ANC. When Comrade is assigned by the ANC to work with the structure that is being appointed by the ANC itself, the ANC-NEC, we don't see any conflict, because we are all members of the ANC. We have been appointed by the ANC. We were not even elected, but in every conference, the same way, when we plan activities of the ANC, we plan them as members of the ANC. There will always be those members. There are members of the Youth League. There are members of other structures that are working with us in terms of these preparations. And here you emphasize the name. You attach the name to to the whole matter of Comrade Manan. It's not only Comrade Manan who's assisting in the preparations of the Women's League. There's a delegation that has been assigned by the SG himself. SG himself signed a number, I think there are 10 members of the NEC to be part of the Women's League conference. Thank you. I think I've answered them.
Thank you. I will respond to issues. I think on the issue of the policy documents, we know, as always, indeed talk about issues of gender equality, but in the main, for now, we then thought of taking a different approach, but maybe nothing new to that, but rather to say we want to reinforce the importance of the role of women within the sectors of our country, such as the infrastructure, because we understand that in the main they also the victim of their high levels of employment in our country. But also we reflected on issues of load shedding, because our belief is that it affects them also severely in terms of job opportunities, and but also it exposed them to issues of vulnerability to being, because they travel late sometimes, going to work. I mean, there are quite a number of things that through the issues that we are faced with, be it issues of load shedding and the challenges within our economy, it affects them. So we have kind of identified quite a number of areas that we felt strongly beyond fighting and championing the issues of gender equality and against gender-based violence, but also we must be able to empower women, but not only doing a talk show, but to ensure that those that are even deployed strategically in areas of the public sector and the private sector, they do create a space for women, more especially the young women, because many of them form part of a bigger portion of the population of the country as youth, with those high percentage. And we do, take interest in ensuring that we don't only talk about their challenges, but we make them being realized by our government, as we also a league of a governing party that is in charge, looking of a better way, of quite a number of departments in all spheres of government. But we also looked also from the private sector's point of view as to what is it that we can benefit to assist them to be empowered and be able to sustain and support their families and find their space of independence within their families and in the space of work without being reliable to be provided than to go all out and in an environment that is conducive and friendly for them to be freely, our traders, be it within or outside the country, internationally. So that's what we are busy with, because we also have subcommittees within the ANC Women's League, which we take from our mother body. And those subcommittees, they deal with issues of leadership qualities where you get an opportunity to be exposed. But also it talks about issues of economy. And also it talks about issues as to how we can then infiltrate and influence that space, but in the main, to prioritize them and be our priority in ensuring that they do benefit in all those. Well, we can mention quite a number of them, but those issues will be discussed at that level of a conference through the commissions. And when the resolution made, I think we can then be invited into this space so that we are able rather not to talk our views as individual, but that collective position that will be taken from those discussions from the commissions as what will be binding us moving forward in terms of the commitment, whoever that will be elected, to say what is it that you are committing to do differently and better for the women of this country. Because our focus, it has to be understood, as the league of the governing party, we regard ourselves as part of the leaders of the society, but focusing on issues of women. Also, our duty is not inward looking about members of the Women's League alone. Our responsibility, it goes beyond. We take care of all the women of this country, and we know it for a fact. Afforded an opportunity to lead, it means that your responsibility is beyond the ANC and the league as the Women's League, but also to champion interest of all women of this country. Well, our interest is beyond, it goes even, you know, nationally, beyond South Africa. So the other part, I think the issue of comrade that has been mentioned here, of the incident that happened some time ago, because the ANC is a very responsible organization, and also the Women's League is not just a league that is being viewed and play a role of an ornament, if I may put it that way. We are afforded an opportunity to raise issues internally. And indeed, we had our share on whatever happened at that time. And the organization itself, it did not leave the matter unattended. There were processes that took place, and all those were, you know, to the public domain, such that at some point he had to, you know, leave some of his responsibilities at the time from government, but we can't take away from his membership, but he continued to be the member of the organization, but internal processes took place, and we can count 1 or 2 things that happened at the time as a way not just to show the country, but to make it, you know, known within our own organization that we take issues of women very serious, and we always be against issues of gender-based violence. And I hope that at least we have tried to respond. Over to you, Ma.
On the same issue, actually, it's probably the only thing I'm going to address. I remember that time, and I remember it from a perspective of being an angry woman at reports of a comrade who would have misbehaved towards a woman. So I remember it from that perspective, but I also remember it because I was still deployed in the legislative sector and interacted with the Gender Commission at the time. And as an individual, as a South African, as a woman, I was satisfied that it was not necessary for us to expel, do, or kill him. He was himself ready to accept that he had done something wrong. That's very important. When a person realizes that he made a mistake, he did wrong, it's different from a person who just carry their ego around and their manhood means everything and nothing else matters. You can all go to wherever you want to go to. So all those things affected and were part and parcel of what was taken into consideration in how we wrapped that particular case up. So it's everything that gets taken into consideration. And he was ready to apologize and to really say that he did wrong. The ANC is not a vindictive organization, actually. It's too caring sometimes is too accommodating and takes its time before it is ready to really deal with a person. So, in the way the issues came to us at the time, DO was ready to accept wrong, and we took all of that into account, even with the bodies outside of the ANC itself. In our interactions with them, we agreed that the way to deal with this is not to destroy a young comrade, it is to allow him to continue to contribute as he continues to contribute in the organization right now. But as she says, he lost out in some areas because, you know, some of these things come with consequences, and he did suffer those consequences. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mama. Razwai, the discussion documents have been available online for a while. They're on www.ancwl.org. You will find discussion documents covering socio-economic transformation, legislation and governance, international relations, communication, a battle of ideas. I just want to say that we must also remember that the ANC itself has come from national conference. So this conference is not really to go and revisit and revise, but rather to ensure that all of the ANC policies have an engendered perspective, which speaks to the issues of women, which I think is what Comrade Nokuthula was raising. And we will come back to you on the decisions that are taken here. One of the things that we'll be paying a lot of attention to is a 30-year review around an engendered society and what that has meant for women. We're also going to be focusing a lot of attention on the 2024 national elections and the role of the ANC Women's League in ensuring a decisive victory for the African National Congress. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for forming a part of this press briefing. We're also seeing other Mayanga here in uniform. You are welcomed. You come introduce yourselves to Mambalega. Members of the media will continue to interact with you, and we'll let you know as soon as the conference gets underway and the open session starts. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mambalega. Thank you, comrades.